There was a time when knowledge had weight. If someone spent 20 years studying medicine, people listened. If someone spent a lifetime studying history, their opinion carried authority. Not because they were always right, no, but because acquiring knowledge required sacrifice to self, time, effort, discipline. Knowledge was expensive. It was something you built a house for, moved into, and inhabited it. Today, knowledge has become nearly free, and that sounds like progress until you realize something strange is happening anyway. We have confused accessibility of information with acquisition of understanding. We are all becoming dilettantes. The dilettante is the ultimate creature of the digital age. They are not unintelligent. In fact, they often are the most informed people in the room. They have read the summaries, scanned the threads, listened to the podcasts, watched the videos. They know the vocabulary of the dozens of different disciplines. But there's a hollowness to that. The dilettante doesn't actually own the ideas or the carry. They are merely a collection of bookmarks, a library card mistaken for a library. They are tourists in the house of a human knowledge, taking photos of everything, but never unpacking their bags. We have begun measured intelligence by velocity. How fast can you find an answer? How quickly can you summarize the trend? How rapidly can you form an opinion? But velocity is not depth. Information is always available. Incentive to internalize it begins to vanish. Why struggle with friction of complex idea? Why spend months wrestling with a philosophy, a craft, a scientific problem? When you can simply look it up, the brain slowly stops building the architecture necessary for wisdom. We have traded the depth, the roots, the expertise for shallow sands of exposure. The dilettante lives in the state of permanent newness, always searching, always consuming, always moving, never arriving. We consume information the way we consume entertainment, looking for the hit, looking for the buzz, looking for the next piece of content to fill the gap, the scan, the skim. We scroll 1,000 topics across our desks every day. We feel informed, but often we simply distract ourselves. We recognize the language of a subject, so we mistake recognition for mastery. We know enough to have an opinion, but not enough to have a perspective. And perhaps the strangest symptom of all is what is happening to the language itself. Words are disappearing, not literally, but from everyday use. Words that once described precise ideas are slowly being replaced by simpler, broader terms. Nuance, wisdom becomes content, expertise becomes influence. The problem isn't that language changes, the language has always changed. The problem is that when a society loses words, it often loses distinction. And when distinction disappears, thinking becomes harder. After all, how do you discuss a concept that no longer has a name? How do you recognize something when you no longer possess the vocabulary to describe it? Words like hubris, nuance, paradox, dilettante, words that don't just describe things, words that separate one idea from another, words that allow us to think with precision. A society that loses words doesn't become silent. It becomes less precise. And precision is where deep thinking begins. There's a reason why we all are becoming dilettantes. It is not simply a personal failing. It is a societal survival strategy. The culture is there. It's the relevance. If you don't know the breaking news, well, the latest controversy, the newest trend, you risk becoming invisible. We fear the silence of not having an opinion. We fear the discomfort of saying, I don't know. So we perform. We trade depth for breadth. Because breadth has become social currency. It buys us access to the controversy or the conversation, and afraid we stop to go deep, lose our seat at the table. But the modern world has created a social tax on depth, and if you choose mastery, you must be willing to become an outsider. You must be willing to miss the latest outrage, the latest trend, the latest distraction. You must be willing to be the person who doesn't know what everyone is talking about today. Because you are focused on something that will matter 10 years from now. You must let the now pass you by so you can devote yourself to the ever. The very people that admire most are the visionaries, right? The builders, the creators, the innovators. And they're often people who stopped paying the tax. They realized that the table everyone is rushing to sit at is actually a treadmill. As long as you are running on that treadmill, you cannot build anything lasting. You are merely keeping up. True innovation requires distance from the noise. True art requires obsession. True wisdom requires focus. All of them require you to step off. All of them require you to embrace a measure of irrelevance. Because the reality of it demands attention today. It's designed to be forgotten tomorrow. See you tomorrow.